Hello, and welcome to It's a Twin Thing podcast.
A podcast where twins, me, Libby,
and me, Kate,
explore life, relationships, well-being, mental health, and everything in between.
Each week, we will deliver relatable content that you can connect with, from discussing our own experiences about the topics we love to guest interviews.
So join us for this week's fun and informative conversation. Now, on to the episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of It's the Twin Thing podcast.
Thank you for joining us for our second episode. We're really excited to have you here and looking forward to this juicy conversation ahead.
Yes, thank you, Kate. We're very excited to be here for episode number 2, and we hope people are tuning in for today's episode. It's going to be a goodie.
Wherever you are, don't forget to tag us in your story so we can know that you're joining us. Let us know what you think and what you liked about the episode, and let's get straight into it.
Alrighty. So how are you doing today?
I am good. It is a really nice sunny day here in New Zealand. I've been literally working online in the sunshine all day. I'm a sucker for a lovely sunny day after winter, especially. How about you?
Yeah, who isn't? Very lucky you can sort of do your job from anywhere.
I know, I'm so grateful for that.
I am very good too. Actually, I've snuck away to the bedroom to do this. So I'm just lying on my bed with a iced soy coffee because it's a hot day.
Oh, la-di-da.
An iced latte. So I am ready to go.
I am currently sipping on, what is it? It's carrot, lemon, apple, orange, and ginger juice. Immunity booster. You can't tell, but I'm holding it up to show Libby here.
Looks good. Are you feeling a bit under the weather?
Yeah, I think just because it's been winter and it's getting hot, the change of seasons, you know.
Yeah.
It messes with your body
one
a little
extreme
bit.
To another.
But just taking all the precautionary measures so that I don't get sick as well.
You have to boost that immunity, girlfriend.
Keep it boosted. Yes, indeed.
But yes, I'm good too. It's Sunday here, so we've just been for a nice bushwalk this morning, and now I've come home to get into this.
Woohoo. I feel like no matter where in the world you are, there's a Sunday vibe. Like it's just
definitely.
a day to enjoy.
Coming into summer, it's October. You're feeling good.
Over here in the southern hemisphere, maybe there's people listening on the other side of the world who are currently going into winter.
Yes, that's true. The beauty of life in the 4 seasons.
Opposite sides of the world. Wow. If you are on the opposite side of the world, hello. Thank you for joining us. So
hello.
Cool.
Alrighty,
hello.
So enough chitter chatter. Let's get into it. Our rose and thorn of the week. Would you like to start? One good thing that happened?
Yeah, I'll start. My rose that happened this week is I made myself a tattoo. I practiced starting to make tattoos a while ago, and it's just one of my favorite things to do in the world. So any chance I can make a tattoo on myself or someone else, it is a highlight. Absolutely.
So what do you actually use to tattoo to yourself? Do you have a gun, a needle?
No, I make hand poke tattoos. So
which
just
is
the needle
what,
only.
for the people that don't know, like me.
So instead of using a gun, which uses electricity and plugs into the wall and is done automatically, you do it single poke by poke by poke. So you make lots of little dots to create the line rather than using the gun, which creates the line for you.
Is it like a needle?
Yeah, it's exactly a needle. It's a singular needle which has multiple needle points in it. You can get different sizes, but I just use a couple of different sizes. And
ouch. Yeah. But I'm glad you enjoyed that. That is a highlight if that's what you enjoy doing.
Yeah. And my thorn of the week, my pain point, would be that we went back into lockdown here where I am in New Zealand. We were they have a level system here from 1 to 4, and we were in level 2, but there's COVID cases on the rise here in New Zealand, so we've gone back into level 3. So more restrictions yet again, but as I said before, I'm grateful I can work from anywhere and work from home basically anyway, so it doesn't affect me too much.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what a pain in the ass 2 years later that we're almost still having to deal with lockdowns. But
Ay, 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 ay.
anyway,
Don't get me started.
one good thing that happened to Mo this week.
What happened to you?
What happened to Mo this week? One good thing that happened. A good thing that has happened. Hamish and I have gone back to the gym this week again, that is a good thing to me because we've been able to sort of get back to some sort of regular routine of exercise. So that actually has made me feel so good, especially when the weather's getting nicer here, and it just feels good to be able to move the body.
Absolutely.
And
Those endorphins going.
yeah,
Build
that's
that
right.
strength. Build that booty.
Booty gains, y'all. And one thing that has been more difficult would probably be I've just been trying to find a balance between work and being a mum. And Poppy, it's been a rough few weeks. She's been going through this regression, like I said last time, but it's still continuing. But she has actually been a bit better. She's literally got like 4 teeth coming through at once. So no wonder.
Yeah, I saw a photo
So
of Poppy with her little baby teeth coming through, and she literally has teeth coming through. It's so cute. I'll never get over it.
I know she's got such a dorky little smile. It's adorable.
Yeah, it's really cute.
So, before we get into the rest of the episode, we wanted to tell you what we're going to be talking about today, which is Kate living through a pandemic in India and all things of Kate's life in India, what she does there, why you chose to move there, and all of people's deep and dying questions around India, COVID, and how you got home all the way back to New Zealand finally a year later.
Woohoo, yeah, it should be a fun conversation. I've never really expressed it out loud to anyone completely, so I'm looking forward. But first, let's talk about something that is really popular on the planet right now. The most viewed series, I think, now on Netflix. People have probably heard of it. What's it called, Libby?
Squid Game.
Squid
If
Game.
you haven't heard of Squid Game right now, you must be living under a rock because I think it's number one in 90 different countries and everybody's talking about it for good and bad reasons.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it, then it's definitely recommended. What is it about, Libby?
So Squid Game, I would say, is sort of based on anti-capitalism. It's like a modern day version of the Hunger Games where players choose to participate, but the players that choose to participate are all sought after by the makers of the games, and they're all people that are either really poor in huge amounts of debt or have nothing else to live for, and they participate in a series of games. And when they participate in the games, it's literally like they are killing them as they're playing. So
It's a
you're
life or
fighting
death
to the death.
game. So, what would have been an innocent game, one by one, all getting eliminated, which is getting killed or dying, to the point where there are the winners that win billions of Korean won, which I'm not sure what that is in US dollars or New Zealand or Australian dollars, but I would imagine a lot.
Yeah,
I
it's
would
millions of
imagine a
dollars
lot.
anyway. So what are your takes on Squid Game? Because I know a lot of people have different opinions on it.
I really liked it, but I am very much someone who likes thrillers and horrors anyway. I think it's sad because it shows the desperation of people, which actually reflects into the reality in the world we live in which the lengths that people will go to in order to have money or something that they do not have. They would literally put their lives on the line in order to get money.
I think it is a really good view on humans in the day and age we live in. A lot of greed and consumption, and sort of people would do anything to get ahead in life. But
And the
anyway,
systems in place
it
that
is
put people there as
extremely,
well.
extremely gruesome. So I literally cannot watch any of the gruesome parts, like all the killings. It is just so fucked up. You just could not even believe what went through that man's mind when he created it.
Absolutely. And I think it shows the extent of the world we live in as well, in which like we're so used to seeing so much death and killing through movies and television up to this point that like it's kind of normal, and that in itself is frightening to me, that like billions and millions, whatever amount of people in the world are actually watching this show, which is horrific.
So even if you haven't watched it, you'll just have to watch it because you want to know what everyone else is talking about.
Yeah. And it is Korean, and I always find it hilarious. Like I prefer to watch subtitles rather than English dubbed versions of things because, you know, the English voiceovers are just hilarious, but they're fine on this one. I think like it's nice.
Yeah, I definitely watched it with the subtitles because I think we put it on the English version and like the mouths just don't match what they're saying. And I was like, I could not do this.
Yeah. So if you haven't, then 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yeah, loved it. Do recommend.
Probably wouldn't watch it again, but I'm looking forward to season 2, whenever that is. 2 years
Yeah.
away, perhaps.
Alrighty, something else we wanted to talk about on the podcast on a bit more of a serious note is October is Mental Health Month.
Yes, it is Mental Health Month in Australia, and just a wonderful time to bring attention to mental health and the stigma around it. I know, particularly in Western countries and New Zealand and Australia, so many of us as individuals don't speak up when perhaps we need to because we think it might not be a big deal, or we feel like we don't have the people around us who will understand. And just want to encourage everyone to always speak up and talk to a loved one, talk to someone if you feel as though you're going through a difficult time.
Yes, we are going to be covering a whole episode. We do have one planned on mental health, but as I know, we both have suffered from some sort of mental health. I think Kate still suffers from anxiety, and I have to a lesser extent previously, and it's totally nothing to be embarrassed about. I think as long as you have someone you can talk to, a friend, a psychiatrist, as opposed to bottling things up, especially in a time where the world is just, there's so many uncertainties, there's so much that going on. I think probably more people, more than ever, their mental health is suffering in so many different ways. So
yeah, exactly. And just know that you are not alone. There are so many people going through the same thing. As much as it can feel like you are alone and that you're isolated and different from everyone else, you are not. And your mental health is a priority. So just don't be afraid to reach out if need be. And I think we could honestly talk about this for so long, but as Libby mentioned, we are going to be doing a whole podcast episode on this. So we don't want to talk too much about it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers it all. So let's get into the episode. Dun, dun, dun. Alrighty, so when did you go to India and why did you choose to go there, Kate?
So I first went to India when I was traveling around Southeast Asia and Indonesia and Asia with my ex. We were just traveling around as you do, seeing the world, then went to India and I just fell in love straight away. We went from the south and traveled up to the north where I finished my first yoga teacher training in 2018, it must have been, or the end of 2017, start of 2018. And as I said, I just really fell in love with the culture. Yoga, especially, is a big reason why I love it there, and the lifestyle, I guess.
So when you first went to India, before you went there, what appealed to you about going to visit that country for? I mean, there's so many countries to go to in the world, and I know a lot of people would never visit India. So what made you choose to go there?
I think I'm just the type of person who likes to see different things anyway, and rather than doing the standard travel in Europe, live in London for a couple of years like many of our friends did, which there's nothing against that at all, but I'm just wanted to see something different and see how people in third world countries actually live and see that side of things.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, everyone chooses to go to different places. I know people were just curious about why India, so I think that covers that one. So what did you do there? Tell us a little bit about the last 3 years living there and what you have been up to.
So basically, I have been studying and learning yoga. It's a big priority in my life. Once I did my first yoga teacher training, yoga for me is not just the moves that you do on your yoga mat, it's a way of living and more philosophy about how you live your life, basically. And you can really feel the root of that and learn from so many wonderful teachers in Rishikesh, especially where I was living for a long time and where I did my first yoga teacher training and then my second yoga teacher training. So I lived in a yoga school for a month, and then I had a decent break, and then went back again and did my 300-hour yoga teacher training for another month. And I feel like that is really it. It has allowed me the freedom to prioritize what I think is important in my life and in life in general.
I just have so many questions that just keep on popping to my mind. But I would like you to tell me about Rishikesh and what was the sort of like surroundings like and the area itself that you were in, because I feel like people have this idea of India and they just think of it as this big hustle and bustle city that's surrounded by poverty, but it actually looks like quite a beautiful place. So I would like you to tell us a bit more about the areas that you were actually in and what they are like.
Yeah. So where I was a lot of the time in Rishikesh is in towards the north of India, close to the Himalayas. They call it in the lap of the Himalayas. And so it's not the India that you see in movies. It is a more relaxed place in which tourists come to learn more about themselves and more about life and just relax next to a holy river there, learn yoga. A lot of the students who are doing teacher trainings come to Rishikesh because it's the yoga capital of the world. And I feel like I have just been there so long, I completely forget that that is even what people actually imagine because it's
Yeah,
just
I
not like
think
that.
I think that's totally what people think, but that brings me to my next question. You own a cafe in Goa, another area of India. So I would like you to tell me a little bit about that cafe, where it is, and how you even got into that.
Yeah, so I'll start with how I actually got into that. I was working online and teaching yoga in Rishikesh in the north of India, as I said, and I was just loving it. And I do enjoy my freedom and living over there. So I was looking for something in which I could teach yoga half the year and really dive deep into my yoga practice. And then the other half of the year, work on, making money in order to live. And then I had been to Goa a few times before, and my friend said there was a raw vegan cafe for sale in Goa. And Goa is a seasonal place. It's only open for half the year because the rest of the year is monsoon season and it's pretty much inhabitable just because there's so much rain. So I got the idea, okay, I'm going to have this cafe half the year and teach yoga and learn yoga the other half of the year. That's obviously not exactly how it's worked out because of life. But yeah, I ended up buying the cafe and I'm just so grateful. I really like it. It's been a huge learning curve for me, but to be able to serve people healthy, raw vegan food in a place which you don't find that kind of food really often, I feel really nice that it has attracted really beautiful people.
So tell us about some of the challenges that presented you. You had the first season at the cafe, which was great. You also explained it to me like it's so westernized there, you almost compared it to Bali. So tell us about your first season, how it went there in comparison to the next season, obviously with COVID and the obstacles that you faced during that.
Yeah. So Goa and Arambol in particular, where I have my cafe, it is pretty much like Bali. Like it's a real coastal touristy area where lots of people come, particularly people on holiday, people traveling, all the hippies come there. So it is a really lovely crowd. And it's a big contrast to Rishikesh because that is the more relaxed, holy yoga place. But the first season was really nice. It was so much learning because obviously it was this first year I had owned a cafe and it was going really well. The whole season went wonderfully, actually. And then it was the last month in which COVID hit. So that was April of 2020. And so we closed early. I sent all my staff home as quickly as I could so they weren't stuck where we were. And yeah, pretty much closed Shantaram, which is the name of the cafe, and just waited in lockdown in India and waited and
And
waited.
so for people that don't know, obviously the staff, they traveled down from, where did they travel down from?
They traveled down from Himachal Pradesh, which is a state in northern India.
So they travel down for the peak tourist seasons to make money to be able to literally survive, and give it to their family for food and things like that, like very basic necessities. So when COVID hit and they had to go home, how much do you think that affected them?
Well, I feel like the first season we were really lucky because it was actually near the end of the tourist season, so not as much, but we didn't want to close as early as we did. So a lot, really.
Absolutely. So when COVID started to hit in India, all of a sudden we're going about our normal lives, and then wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am.
Bam, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Why did you choose to stay in India at the start, or did you think about coming home?
At the start, I was just planning on staying in India because I feel like we didn't really expect it to be as bad as it was
No,
or be as
nobody really
difficult as it
knew
was.
the
Yeah.
extent
And
of what it was going to be like.
exactly. And at that stage, it's like I have been living there for so long. I didn't exactly think about rushing home to New Zealand where I didn't have as much things, my
Yeah,
whole life
while
is
your
there.
livelihood was
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
My partner is there. I had a partner at that stage, my partner Rahul. And yeah, I didn't want to just leave, basically.
Yeah. So I
And
think at the start, obviously, before things got really bad, it was sort of just a matter of like, okay, I'll wait this thing out a few months and then I'll be able to return home to normal. Little did we
absolutely.
think
And it's
2
not
years
like I
later.
was exactly. And it's not like I was there scared of COVID or, I was fine where I was. It is just the fact that when I did want to come home because Libby had a baby, I literally couldn't for over a
Yeah.
year
So
because
I
of New
think
Zealand's borders.
so I think it was sort of March of 2020 that you decided, okay, maybe I should try to start coming home now. The situation was getting worse. And what happened during that stage?
Yeah, well, it wasn't until actually April, May, June. It wasn't until about June because you didn't find out you were pregnant until April.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. At that stage, it was actually okay because we were still just getting out of the first wave of COVID in India, and then everything was kind of getting more and more relaxed again. But in that time, I knew, okay, I want to start trying to get back to New Zealand to be or Australia to be with Libby when she gave birth to her daughter and see my dad and brother and mum and family. And that is when it was just impossible.
So flights had definitely stopped at
Yeah.
that stage.
There was one repatriation. That's the one word I can't say as well.
Repatriation?
Yeah, repatriation flight to New Zealand, which was literally $5,000. And at this stage, I'm not working like a normal job. That is a shit ton of money for me
Yeah, it is a lot of money.
in
Um,
general. Yeah. So that wasn't really an option for me. So I thought, okay, I'll wait. Sure. Little did I know that flights would still not be going months and months and months later. And then that is when the second wave of COVID hit and India's cases started spiking again. So that was when people also stopped taking flights from India. Like Emirates just was not taking flights. My flight got cancelled about 5 times. So when New Zealand was finally accepting citizens, I couldn't come because no one would wanted anyone from India.
so at this stage, then you had no choice but just to hunker down and be in the lockdown. What did India start to look like through the pandemic? What was the environment like? What did the poverty get worse? Were there people around? What were sort of the conditions like there?
Yeah, well, I just want to point out where I live are both very touristy areas. So, what you saw on the news, I couldn't actually see in my direct reality, even if it was happening. Like, as much as I am living in India, I'm still living in a privileged bubble.
Yes, I
Um,
think that's important to mention because obviously, we've all been in lockdowns, but we are still all very privileged. Like, we're in lockdowns with roofs over our head, we've got food in the
exactly.
pantries, you can still go to the supermarket, but these
Yeah.
people literally have nothing. Their livelihood is to work. Like, people are starving.
Yeah. People work day to day to feed their family. So, there was a huge thing when it very first started. So we were in lockdown initially for the first few months. I can't remember exactly how long. And then there was complete freedom again for a little while after that. And then it wasn't until a few months later in which we went into a complete second lockdown. But the second one was all right because I feel like we were all used to it. But the first one was when hundreds of thousands of migrant workers who are working away from their family were walking hundreds and thousands of miles and dying along the way to get home. Some of them were maids at people's houses. caretakers, they're working far away from the villages where they live, and there was no public transportation going, so they just decided to walk. I feel like that was a pretty crazy story, seeing that in the news and seeing people literally dying just trying to get home to reach their families.
That is, and I know at one stage you even sent me a photo or told me a story about the neighbors that you had, and they were a family, and she was like a very skinny woman, and they were asking you for money just so that they could buy some rice, just to be able to have food for just heaps of rice, and that was enough to last them for like a week or so.
Yeah, I just realized who you were talking about. And exactly. And seeing stuff like that, it makes you feel like fucking hell. Sometimes I think I have nothing, but I have everything I need. Literally, all you need is water, family, food, and a roof over your head. And that is what is important in life. So even in the middle of a pandemic, I felt very grateful for the circumstance I was in. I had a safe roof over my head. It was only when COVID started getting into the slums in India, obviously, that is when it also got really bad, because there is no such thing as social distancing in those circumstances, like
Yeah.
how privileged it is to even be in my own house then.
And I think that's when sort of panic starts to kick in once it actually got closer to you, because it's sort of like if you were to get sick or you needed help, obviously the hospitals and the medical system that they had there had totally collapsed, and it was just really dire situation.
Yeah, but again, where I was, it wasn't completely bad. It still seemed like pretty normal. I stayed
Yeah.
home a lot, and my partner Rahul was the one who only went out and went to the supermarket. But especially for those first few months, it was just like us at home on the balcony, drinking coffee and doing art all day. That was our lockdown.
Yeah, that was your lockdown. So that brings me to my next question. Fast forward, I think it was till July this year, correct me if I'm wrong, when you still had been trying to get home all this time, but just quietly trying to come up with ways. I know I was Googling like crazy all the time, like flights and routes and ways that you could come home if we fly through this country, if you did this. Like, it was very desperate at this stage.
Yeah.
So you had someone reach out to you, somebody from the news. What month was that? And tell us
Oh,
about that.
that must have been in about April. So I had initially booked my MIQ, which is New Zealand's quarantine facility, because you have to quarantine upon arrival. I had initially booked it 3 months in advance. I think it must have even been 4 months, because I couldn't even get into the country because there were so many people trying to get back at that stage, and New Zealand's borders were completely closed.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, it's MIQ is a system where you have to try and book a hotel room. The availability has to be on the same day that you have your flight. So at that
Yeah.
stage, that was the tricky
So even
part.
if you found an MIQ spot, you still had to get the flight and land on the exact same day in which you had managed to book the spot in. So that was a difficulty in itself. For like a couple of weeks straight, I'm on there every single day trying to find a spot and see if one opens. And then they just weren't opening any other spots for a few months. So anyway, I digress. I had booked a spot for must have been April. Yeah, because that was when it kept getting cancelled and cancelled. So I had been waiting patiently for a few months. My flight was the next week, and then that is when all the flights got cancelled from Emirates because India's second wave of COVID had hit. So I had a friend reach out to me. Do you want to be on the news? I have a friend who works for One News or something like this, and he's just going to ask you a few questions. And at that stage, I was just livid, and I was so upset to be waiting literally over a year to be able to come home and then have it a week away and then get it cancelled. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And I wasn't
It's
completely,
literally just some sort of sick torture.
yeah, it was. It was a different kind of torture. I was literally experiencing panic attacks, really high anxiety. Like it was affecting my day to day life so much at that stage because it was just mental torture. Yeah. So I got interviewed by a man on One News. It was such a casual conversation. And I just said exactly to him what I was going through, not kind of putting together that it's actually going to be on New Zealand news. And I live in India. I don't watch the freaking news. And I kind of just forgot how many people actually watch it.
So you obviously reached out to me, and I thought it actually could be a good idea because, it's some exposure into what the challenges has been Kiwis trying to get home and things like that. And I thought, oh, yeah, it could be actually a really good idea for people to actually get a sense of what the hell is going on outside of like their little bubble. So he reached out to you and you agreed. And what happened after that?
Well, as I said, we just had a nice conversation about what was happening. I voiced what I was going through and what I was feeling. And then, yep, that
Which
happened.
was stress.
It was
And
stressful.
how?
I said it's unfair. Like I've been trying to get home and trying for months now. Like it's really affecting my mental health. And that was fine. I went away. I had a swim in the ocean and carried on with my day. And then I came back. Little did I know that the whole of New Zealand would freaking hate me. That's what it
So
felt
what
like
was the
here.
interview on like the 6 o'clock news?
Yeah, it was on the 6 o'clock news. And then there was also a Facebook post with the interview as well.
Prime
And
time.
and it was just a lot of backlash. Like I've never felt so hated in my life, probably. Like so many comments that I was just trying not to watch. And I was also just having an anxiety attack, an absolute panic of, oh my gosh, what have I done? These people hating me because I should have come home. I had a chance. What am I still doing in India? Blah, blah, blah. Just closed-minded
Yes.
Facebook comments,
Yes, this
those
made me
people.
so angry. Like as soon as obviously you were getting messages and people saying like they watched it, which was like from friends being like, oh, I saw you on the news. The other part of that was just like hell, which was the Facebook post. And as soon as it had gone up there, I also couldn't stop reading the comments. And I could not believe just how small-minded people are saying, oh, what were you doing even living in India in the first place? Who goes to
It's been
India?
over
Why
a
didn't you
year.
yeah, why didn't you try and come home? And even like people from Cambridge that have even never even left Cambridge in their lives, commenting, like sharing Kate's profile and said she's actually not stranded, she lives there and owns a business. And
It's like you have no idea about my life. Like people just
no,
assume.
it's just like that small-minded mentality. Like you haven't been affected by it personally, you've been stuck in your little bubble, you don't have family overseas,
Exactly.
you're
It's
you're
just zero
safe where you
compassion.
are. Yeah, the lack
And
of
that is the problem.
compassion.
People were just so unaware of what other people are going through, even when it doesn't come to pandemics, just in life in general, that they don't have the compassion and kindness for other people that should be there always.
It's just the lack of compassion. And I think that's the terrible thing about social media is it gives people a platform just to literally like throw people under the mud, say what they want, and there's no consequences. It's a dangerous place.
Oh, exactly. We could do a whole episode on social media, which I think we should actually, Libby.
Yeah, that
But
is a
yeah, it
good
just
idea.
takes away that human to human connection. Like, oh, you're actually a person going through something. You probably need support, not hate.
Yeah, but the hate was more than anything we could have imagined. So you got
So I was
that
like,
taken off.
I emailed him like, oh my God, this is horrible. Please take it off, please. I'm like begging you. And
And
then I
did they
woke up the
take it
next day
off?
and he was like, okay, thanks, Kate. I'm so sorry I've taken it off.
Goodness me. It's
I
like you
also had to
tried to,
remind myself of like how fast people actually move on as well.
yeah, for them it's a fleeting moment and a comment. But to you, like you were living through that anxiety and hell, so that just heightened
Oh,
everything.
absolutely. It was like such a personal thing. Like with every inch of my being, I just wanted to be in Australia with Libby in New Zealand. But
So after all of that, so you rebooked a flight.
I rebooked 2 extra flights, 3 maybe. I think they all got cancelled. Then I got help from the New Zealand government to book another flight and get an emergency MIQ spot because I was actually classed as a vulnerable citizen because India was spiking so much in COVID cases as well.
So when you finally were like, this is it, I'm going home, tell us about the 24 hours that you would just never believe before you were leaving Goa to get to the airport.
This is like something out of a movie, but this actually happened. I would never
This
actually
is real
imagine that this would
life.
happen. Like after all that I've been through, okay, I was going on my flight the next day. Finally, like I've literally been waiting over a year. And what happens that night before I fly out? A hurricane. We had no power for 24 hours. Like my phone and laptop and everything was actually dead. We had very, very extremely high winds. A 40 something year old mango tree fell down outside my house. Everything was uprooted, the power lines down. When I say there was no power, there was no power and no phone reception for 2 days.
You just could not read about it.
Oh, yeah. At one point in the night, I forgot about this. At one point in the night, our whole balcony was flooding so much that it just started coming inside. So Rahul and I were rushing around the house with ankle deep in water, trying to get it outside because all the drains were blocked from all the leaves and stuff that had blown in.
It's like if someone was testing you, boy, they were just not ready to give up yet.
Oh my gosh,
So
I'm
you
like,
had
I'm just not supposed to leave India either. What the hell?
so during this 24 hours, you're meant to be in a car on your way to the airport the next day with no power. What happened then?
Rahul had to get on our little scooty and drive to someone's house in order to ask for a taxi driver and where they live, because we couldn't obviously order a taxi. So then, yeah, Rahul went and found a taxi driver, basically, the old school way. Just go find a taxi
Word of
driver and
mouth.
bring them back to our house. Yeah, because obviously we couldn't call anyone. And then that is what happened, basically. It's just like the aftermath, the next day the wind had died down, there's everything damaged everywhere, and I was like, okay, I am leaving India.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
And so you're finally in the taxi on the way to the airport thinking like, holy fuck, this is really happening. And also a little backstory, what people don't know is you had to have a negative COVID test 72 hours pre-departure. You also had to have like a layover in, which country was it?
Qatar.
Qatar, of like 10 hours. So tell us about what happened when you finally got to the airport thinking like, I am on my way home.
Even relaying this, I'm like, this was actually ridiculous.
Like, this is
So I
not my
finally
life.
said goodbye to Rahul. It was really sad, we know we're not going to see each other for months. And then, okay, I'm on the plane, reset. This is good. I'm going home. Yay. Then I went to the airport, waited there for a few hours to board my flight, and I wasn't allowed on the plane because my negative COVID test had to be done within 48 hours to get into Qatar, where I was having my layover, even though to get into New Zealand, it was 72 hours. So I couldn't board.
What? Holy crap. So what happened after that when you were like, holy fuck, I am actually cannot get on this plane. I'm in the city. What next?
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be in Delhi in the middle of a pandemic. Nope. No, thank you. So it was literally 1 o'clock in the morning. This is when I was supposed to board my flight. And I called the woman who was helping me. And I was like, I'm not allowed to book the flight. No one told me I'm bawling my eyes out. Like, I can't board the flight. Panic, absolute panic. However, long story short, she helped me to book a hotel close by, and I had to book another flight for 4 days later. So I had 4 days in a hotel in Delhi, just waiting until I boarded my
Holy
flight.
fuck. If you could throw anything else at one poor person, you were just stuck in another halfway point. And I just remember waking up and seeing a text message from you about like, please don't contact me. This is what's happened, but like I'm going to put my stuff to sleep. Like I just cannot even believe this is my life right now.
Yeah, literally, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning at that stage when I got there, and I was like, I just need to go to sleep.
What else could you do at that stage besides
Yeah.
fall into a heap?
And I think I was just so defeated. It's like so defeated at that stage. It was like a big cosmic joke, really. There's
Really, like
so many lessons and learnings of just like complete having to actually surrender and accept because everything was out of my control.
I know, but I also feel like, no, what was there to be learned in that? There was nothing to be learned in that. That was just like fucking shit, and you were just dealt
Kick
a
me while
really
I'm
bad
down.
hand. There was nothing to be learned in that. Like, it's just like cruel.
Yeah,
So finally, then 5 days later, after you had been in this hotel room, you got to board the flight.
I did. I finally got to board the flight. I flew at 3 o'clock in the morning with like complete PPA gear. I think that's what it's called. I had to wear like a mask, a whole thing over my head, plastic covering, like a whole nurse outfit. I have really
Yeah.
funny photos of that actually, to Qatar. And then I arrived there at like 3 in the morning. I had literally a 10-hour layover. And then it wasn't until I got onto that second flight from Qatar to New Zealand, which actually went through Australia as well, that I felt so emotional. I just started crying like, oh my God, there's nothing actually stopping me from getting onto the second flight now. Like I had gone through security. I was not actually believing that I was coming home until I was on that flight. Like I was sure that something else was going to happen.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't until you were actually like, holy shit, this is happening. But I thought this was happening a week ago.
Yeah, months ago.
So what was it like when you finally landed back in New Zealand? You didn't know which city they were going to put you in because you have to spend 2 weeks in a hotel at that stage. So what happened when you landed, and when did you find out where you were going?
Yeah, so luckily I ended up in a hotel in Auckland, which is just an hour and a half from my hometown in one of the biggest cities in New Zealand. And yeah, just arrived in the hotel, this fancy as fuck hotel room, which I think usually costs about 500 New Zealand dollars a night, was my home for 2 weeks.
Wow. And were you allowed to go outside when you were in the hotel room, or what was it like? What were the meals like?
Well, the hotel itself was really nice. So the food was okay. I got takeaways quite a few times, but that's only because I am vegan and fussy. And I had not eaten that kind of food for a
Two
while.
of people's favorite things.
Yeah, vegan and fussy. Oh. So, yeah, one of the things that is very close to my heart is coffee. Someone delivered me coffee, which was really nice. Someone delivered me magnesium to sleep because at that stage, my anxiety was so bad from everything I had gone through that I was just needed magnesium to get to sleep.
Wow.
And then we were allowed to go out walking a few times a day, but because it was in the middle of the city, we had such a small walking area that it was literally around the car park in the middle of the city. You can imagine how small that was, like a 20-meter circumference, probably.
Wow.
And I was out there 3 times a day for 14 days straight, leading the pack around and around and around this tiny car
Oh
park.
my goodness. But I think
Literally,
at least,
I was getting like 10,000 steps in a day, which is more than my average, but like
yeah,
there's no windows in that room. There was no fresh air. So I was out there every single chance I got.
at least you were able to do that. No, though I know with some hotels in Australia, people aren't even allowed to, you're not actually allowed to even go outside. So you're literally stuck inside for 2 weeks, and some people don't even have windows in their room. So that's actually pretty lucky, isn't it?
I could not imagine not have being able to go outside and walk. Like that was my saving grace during my quarantine.
Well, it's
If I
enough to
was
send
younger.
anyone mad, isn't it? So
Yeah.
you
And again, I
finally,
am really lucky I work online. So I was also working throughout that as well, which keeps me
yeah.
sane.
So finally, you did your 2 weeks. You couldn't believe you actually got to walk out those doors. How are you adjusting to life back in New Zealand?
Yeah, well, it has been 4 months now since I have been back in New Zealand. I feel like I still haven't quite adjusted because I am still waiting to get to Australia. It's been so nice to be back and spend time with my dad and with my brother and other family and friends and see all the girls and stuff. But it's just a different lifestyle in general, I think. Like it's very fast paced. Like sometimes I'll ask people what they're doing this weekend and they're like, I'm busy until like next month. I'm
And
like,
you're like,
oh, you're
oh,
not free tomorrow? Like that's how my mind works.
I'll just walk down and see it. Oh, I've got plans.
Yeah, people have lives. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just getting used to that kind of pace again. And I have been here an extra month than I was supposed to because I am still trying to get to Australia. And again, my flight got cancelled 1 week before I was supposed to fly from here to Australia because of COVID now in New Zealand. So here I am, still living in limbo, living and
I
learning.
know. And all we can do at this stage is hope that you will be here by Christmas. But thank you for answering all those questions. That's sort of all we will be talking about COVID, because we know people are very fatigued. But think that was an important episode so people can get like a different perspective on what it was actually like in like a third world country living through COVID and the troubles that you faced. I'm
Yeah, and just that.
fascinated, and I'm sure other people will be too.
And just life is not so black and white. So
No,
many people
it's
go through
not.
different things, and things are not so easy at the moment, especially during this time. So, what a process it was. And I
Like
am one of the
literally,
lucky ones, There's people who have had people pass away and they've not been able to come home for their funerals, like very close family like this. And I won't
like,
go into a too somber
no,
amount of detail there, but you know what I mean.
yeah, like literally, people have never faced as much adversity as they have in the last 2 years, I tell you, and everybody is due for some fucking good luck.
It is wild. A wild world out there, folks. Stay safe.
Yes. Alrighty, so that brings us to our last segment, our fairy angel card. Kate.
Okay, guys. So, as you know, if you listened to last week, we are pulling a fairy card, a fairy oracle card, a fairy
For
oracle card for
the
you
technical word
at the end of our episode. So I'm shuffling,
and I think I'm gonna pull the card.
So you tell me when. But wait a moment and just think about it. Take a breath.
Stop.
Sexuality.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, so this card is a really beautiful fairy and it has the word sexuality on it, which is the note for everybody this week, guys and gals and everyone in between. This is for you to focus on for the coming week.
Hit us.
I'm just finding the affirmation to go with it.
With your best shot.
The card meaning is your sexual self needs some attention. By drawing this card, you are urged to be honest with yourself about your sexuality and to take appropriate steps. Affirmation is my sexual self is attractive, healthy, and able to experience great pleasure.
Wow.
So that's it, everybody. That is for you this week. That probably has a different meaning and resonance with everybody, so you can interpret that as you like. But that's what the fairies would like to tell you this week.
Thank you, fairies, and thank you, Kate. That brings us to the end
of
our episode.
Libby.
No, thank you, girl.
No, thanks. Thanks you guys for listening.
Too much.
Too Mickey.
Alrighty. And on that note, thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a banger. If you liked the episode or loved the episode, please go on to Spotify, give us 5 stars, tag us on your Instagram stories, share the love, show the love, be the love. Make sure you are following us on Instagram at It's a Twin Thing Podcast.
Yes, let us know where you are, what you're doing, and what you thought of the episode.
Thank you for listening to It's a Twin Thing podcast.
If you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on Spotify, as it helps us a lot with exposure so other people can find the podcast too.
Or if you like, share with a friend, maybe even the random lady at the supermarket, and tag us in your stories, letting us know that you've joined us for our conversation this week.
Feel free to send us a DM on Instagram as well at It's a Twin Thing Podcast. We would love to hear from you. And until next time,
we love you!